Hi, I'm attorney Renee Osipov, and I assist parents, guardians, and students who are having issues surrounding 504 plans and those accommodations. In this video, I'm talking about what a 504 plan looks like in Illinois. And the answer actually is it's the same in all 50 states because the 504 plans and the accommodations are actually written in federal statutes, specifically the Individuals with Disability Act, Section 504. So that's where the plan gets its name. So all the rules about how the school can comply with the 504, the accommodations that can be granted, the requirements of a student to be eligible, all of those things are actually federal law. So they apply to all 50 states. So if you're in Illinois or you move to Virginia, all of those are going to be the same. So in this video, I'm just going to kind of walk you through what is a 504 plan, what can be included in it, and who can get one. So the requirements for a student to be eligible for a 504 plan are actually pretty broad. The federal statute states that a child or student has to have a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits a major life activity. So what that means is like a child has to have some type of diagnosis where they are impaired. So it can be a mental impairment, so anxiety, ADHD, or it can be a physical impairment. Maybe they've had a traumatic brain injury or something physical where they're having difficulties walking and moving about the school facility. Something that is substantially limiting them. And again, it can be physical or mental, or it can be both. So I always recommend that parents start with a diagnosis. So for example, ADHD, if you're going to be asking for a child to have accommodations, you want them to be evaluated for a 504 plan, I would start with the diagnosis of that because then they are going to be likely eligible. You've gone through that first element. Then substantially limiting them. This is where teachers come into play and also parents as well, but they're going to supply data, which could be observations. So if the child is not focused in the class, or if it's something physical, maybe the teacher has observed that the child has difficulty in a certain environment, and that it's substantial. So then at that point, then it's likely that the 504 plan would be granted. So then a meeting is held with parents, sometimes students. I don't always recommend that depending on their age though, and their classroom teacher, the 504 plan coordinator, and sometimes the special education gets involved, even though 504 plan is not technically specialized instruction. It's just accommodations and services. But sometimes there are overlap between an IEP, which would include those, and then a 504 plan. So then at the meeting, they would talk about observations and data, so where they currently thought the student was, and then they would decide if they felt like that the student needed those accommodations, and then they would sort of walk through what those accommodations would look like. And again, this is the same in Illinois as in any other state. So when the team comes together to meet, like I said, they'll go over the observations, they'll talk about what is substantially limiting to that student, and then they'll go through. So does the child need services? This may mean occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy. Those are type of services normally brought in, or some type of therapy, maybe like psychotherapy with a school psychologist, something like that. Also, accommodations can be made for where the student sits in the class. Transitional periods, are they allowed more time in the hallway? Are they granted an aide to assist them? And then also, I would say probably the most common accommodations are how either information is presented to the student, how they're presenting their knowledge on assessments and assignments. So I'd say most commonly, in my experience, students with a diagnosis of ADHD with a 504 plan are going to get accommodations. That would be something like they would get extra time on their exams, or they're allowed to take them in a separate area. Perhaps maybe they're overstimulated, so they're allowed to have some type of sensory tool, and that can look really different for everybody. So that may be something that they have in their hands that they can play with, something on their chair that they can push their legs against, where they're able to get up and move out into the hallway. So those accommodations, like I said, are really endless. The law does not state what can and can't be included in the accommodations. It's just whatever they need for that student to have a free and appropriate education, which is great. It's great for the parents, it's great for the student, because these plans can really be tailored to meet any sort of specific needs. I would also mention when creating a 504 plan, you want to consider the entire environment of the school. So this is not only just in the classroom giving instruction or taking exams. This is transitional periods. This is specials, so like art, music, those type of classes. You want to remember those as well. And I would say, well, extracurricular activities. And then also the one that really gets forgotten is the cafeteria. So if you have a student who has sensory issues, the cafeteria is really a challenging place for that student to be. So that's something you want to remember. And, you know, there's lots of smells. The noise level is extremely high. Students are moving around constantly. So if that's challenging to a student, that can be addressed in a 504 plan as well. And then lastly, whenever you're creating the 504 plan, those accommodations, just make sure whenever they're writing them that it's easily transferable, meaning that any educator that comes into that classroom can read that accommodation and know exactly how to implement it. So for example, if an accommodation says that a child will get extended time on an exam, well, what does that mean? So the general education teacher who's there every day might know that that student is only going to get time and a half on their exam or test. But if a substitute teacher is there that day, do they know how much time? Can the student literally sit there all day long and take that exam because there's no end limit? So again, that's something you want to consider whenever you're writing those accommodations, that anyone can look at it and know how to implement it. And again, also, it just needs to be detailed for that student. So if they have a diagnosis of ADHD, not all students who have ADHD need those exact same accommodations. Maybe they don't need extra time, but maybe they need a quiet environment. So it's really just, it can be tailored to meet that student's specific needs, which is what's great about a 504 plan. So if you have any additional questions or you'd like to contact us, all of our information is in the description below this video, and we're happy to help. Thanks.